We are 6 months into our fantasy, and so it's time to check in on the bingo board and see how we're doing. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brie and this is 4 Paws in a Book. Today we're going to be talking about the Our Fantasy bingo board, kind of giving you a 6-month mid-year update and see where we're at. It's not halfway through despite being 6 months in. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I will link my TBR up above that I posted in April where I talked about the 25 books that I had planned to read. Today we're going to see which ones I have completed and if they were even the original books that were on my TBR or not. So here is the bingo board and here's what my bingo board looks like. So we're close to getting like a bingo in some places. We have some work to do. Let's start up in the top left corner. The prompt was first book in a series, and to fit the hard mode it needed to be something longer than a trilogy. The original book that I had on here was Blood and Steel. However, I did read Court of Blood and Bindings during Battleathon. That is a 4-book series, and then there are also like spin-offs to it, so it's technically even longer than that, and this is the first in that series, so it counted it even though it wasn't the original book that I had planned. The next prompt was to read a book that had an alliterative title. The hard mode was it had to have 3 of the same letter in it. I do have a book for it. It doesn't fit the hard mode, so I may still try to pick up When Women Were Dragons. However, I did read Wild and Wicked Things, and so that is an alliterative title. It's just not hitting the hard mode yet. The next prompt was Under the Surface. I originally had either Into the Drowning Deep or Fathom Folk on here. I did read Into the Drowning Deep, and that could fit. It's just that you're only allowed to have 1 reread, so I didn't want to plug this quite into place yet. And also, you can only have the author on here 1 time. And because I read a lot of Seanan McGuire and Mara Grant, I didn't want to quite put it on there yet, but I could. But if we're getting to crunch time, I could count that. The next prompt that I have finished is Criminals, and for that I read House of Bane and Blood. There's a lot of romantic on this board, not gonna lie. Which, like, are we surprised? No, we are not. This one was a very easy one. It's not the one that I had originally picked because when I was making this TBR in April, I didn't know that book existed. I did check this one off and absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books of the year. Now we're gonna move down to the second row, and I did complete the Entitled Animals, the hard mode being that it had to be a magical animal, and I read Dragon Fruit by Makia Lucier, and I actually read this one like in April, so it was very quickly after the start of it. Dragon is a magical animal, so it works. The next prompt was self-published or indie pub, and it had to have, I think, under 100 ratings for hard mode. This one is one that I always use as a Spiffbo book, and that's what I did. I read Goddess Found. This was one of the 10 books that I had to read to pick a semi-finalist. I'll link the vlog up above. I think it's a really good book for like people that read contemporary, specifically contemporary romance, that are wanting to get more into fantasy because it's like a dating show but in a fantastical land. And then I also read the Romantasy prompt, and the hard mode was that it needed to be LGBTQ+, and I read A Taste of Golden Iron. That is a male bodyguard romance. Then we go down to the next row, and I had already actually read this one by the time I was posting my TBR. It was the very first one on there, and so it was a character with a disability, and I read Dark Knight Golden Dawn. This character has PTSD, and the hard mode is that the main character has to have either a physical or a mental disability. Then we go down to the next row, and I did read a space opera. It's not the one that I had planned on because I think I had said I was going to read like a Star Wars novel, but I did read An Unkindness of Ghosts during Amazing Readathon and really liked it, and I think that that is a space opera. It's not like one that I originally had thought of, but definitely a space opera. It works. And then for an author of color, I read Savage City by Al Penelope. This was also another romantasy that I read prior to going to ApollyCon, and it was not a favorite of mine, but glad that I read it, glad that I tested out that author before I met them. And then I kind of stretched this one, I think, but Survival was the next one. And it literally, like, the prompt was like that you had to survive something. Like, it didn't really say what. I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This person was surviving monsters of his own making, of his own creation, while also trying to survive in Hollywood as a queer producer. And so, yeah, I'm counting it. Okay, I'm counting it. And then finally, I also read the Set in a Small Town, and originally I had put Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates, and I have not read that one yet. However, I did read House of Shadows by Darcy Coates during Face Off weekend, and this also is set in a small town. It's a historical horror, but there's a very different vibe to it, and this wasn't one of my favorites of hers, but I think a lot of that is because it was historical. It just like is not the same vibe that I go into a Darcy Coates book for, but it is set in a small town, so it does count. And as of right now, that is all that I have pinned on this board. I think that there are probably ones that I have completed that maybe either didn't hit the hard mode, so I just like am saving them, or I'm just like not committing to that book being in that one spot. For example, the published in 2024. I have read 2024 releases. I have read some 2024 releases that were debuts, but I'm just not sure like where I want to put everything, right? So we'll figure that out at the end, and I will show you my board at the end of this adventure when we do next year's. So this definitely is something that I need to prioritize, something that I need to focus on if I want to complete it. I've gotten really close every single year, but it's generally because I don't make it a focus at the end of the year, or like the end of the Our Fantasy year. This runs from April to March. It's nice because it doesn't get hidden in this end of year content that we always have in December and January. So yeah, it's weird that we're 6 months into something, but it's October. Let me know if you are participating in Our Fantasy and you know, how you're doing with it. If you're not feeling chatty, do the fall leaf emoji. And if you do want to check out my TBR, I'll have the video posted right here. You can go check it out. You can maybe see what I had planned to read. And if you are still struggling to find a book, maybe I'll have a recommendation for you. That's all I have for you today. If you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, and my Patreon are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!